Very good evening to you and welcome to Citizen Business. I am Terry Anchebet. Now, full-year results from Kenya's corporate sector have now begun streaming in, and 2014 seems it wasn't such a bad year at all for Kenya's largest bank by assets, and that's KCB. Now, the bank recorded an 18% increase in its full-year profitability to a net pre-tax profit of 23.3 billion shillings. And as Bella Genga now tells us, KCB intends to whet the country's borrowing appetite even further by extending low-value loans at rates of below 10%.
Fueled by a slight drop in average lending rates from 16.9% to 15.9%, KCB's lending increased by 24.6% to 283.7 billion shillings, with its net interest income growing by 9% to 35.9 billion shillings. Customer deposits rose by 23.4% to 377.3 billion shillings as at the close of December 2014. Income earned from fees and commissions grew by 21.3% to 12.7 billion shillings, largely from mobile and online transactions.
We alone have 16,000 points of sale. The county governments, the central government collections. This is the way of digitizing payments and enhancing transparency and increasing revenue collections for our country. It's the biggest business we see. You know, our target is to grow the point of sale to 100,000.
Going forward, KCB plans to use the mobile phone all the more to extend small value loans at interest rates of below 10%. Last year, the country's largest bank by assets issued 1 billion shillings worth of loans through its mobile banking system.
The rates on the mobile are very short term, so they are more 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and you're going to see completely different rates. It will be single-digit rates. It's one of the products we're launching with Safaricom and M-Pesa in the coming week. This is a business we can build a loan portfolio of 10 billion.
Still on the financial services front, CFC Stanbic Holdings recorded an 11% increase in profitability in 2014 to post an after-tax profit of 5.69 billion shillings. This was achieved on the back of a 12% increase in its net interest income to 8.38 billion shillings. During the period under review, CFC Stanbic's lending went up by nearly 28% to 88.3 billion shillings. Bella Genga, Citizen Business, Digital Edition.
Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee has opted to leave the bank's policy lending rate to commercial banks unchanged at 8.5% for the 22nd consecutive month. Now, in a statement, the outgoing CBK Governor, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, who's also the chairman of the committee, said the decision to retain the central bank rate unchanged is aimed at containing inflation in view of the growing level of foreign exchange risk that the country is currently facing. Now, Professor Ndung'u has said that the threat of a weaker shilling to the US dollar will send up the cost of imported items, which include petroleum products, thereby raising inflation. Now, the decision came in even as the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics announced that Kenya's overall rate of inflation in February rose to 5.61%. That's up from 5.53% in January. Now, according to reports by Reuters, this latest rate decision is the last under Professor Njuguna Ndung'u's watch as CBK Governor. Professor Ndung'u, who has served for 2 consecutive 4-year terms, is set to leave office on the 4th of March, and that's, of course, next Wednesday. Now, the latest National Food Security Assessment has indicated that at least 1.6 million Kenyans are currently facing acute hunger. An assessment that has yet again put Kenya's level of food security on the spot. And as Dennis Otieno now reports, Kenya may have to take a leaf from Israel, a largely arid country that has managed to adequately feed its population.
Agriculture is Kenya's main economic activity, with over 60% of the population actively involved in it. But if the latest food security assessment report is a pointer to go by, food shortage is still part of the national narrative, with 1.6 million Kenyans currently at risk of starving to death if they fail to get food relief for the next 6 months. That paradox becomes even more apparent when one compares Kenya, which is a water-scarce country, to yet another water-scarce country, Israel, a country that produces enough food for its 8 million people and for export.
We are a small country, small in population, small also in territory.
Israeli agricultural experts see the adoption of modern agricultural technology as one of the key pillars of the country's food security.
You must invest in the irrigation, in making your agriculture modern. It's a process.
Israel also places lots of emphasis on proper use of its existing water resources, which include recycled water and harvested rainwater.
In some places we see huge rivers and next to them plots, empty agricultural areas which are suffering from shortage of water.
This as the government banks on large-scale irrigation projects such as the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme to change the country's tired narrative of perennial food insecurity. Denis Otieno, Citizen Business, Digital Edition.
Meanwhile, the debate on the adoption of genetically modified crops rages on, and now a new report shows that 28 countries across the world have opted to adopt biotech crops to mitigate the threats of food insecurity and climate change. And as Patrick Igunza now reports, Kenya is now under growing pressure to change its stance towards genetically modified crops.
The debate on whether Kenya should adopt the propagation of genetically modified crops or GM crops has been ongoing for long. This in light of the unending controversy that surrounds the process through which a crop's DNA is altered.
What you do, you identify that gene and transfer it to the crop so that it can also confer the same phenotype. So the thing is that you can empower it further. We're not creating anything new. You are just actually merging or just complementing whatever the plant has.
But a new report by the International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications shows that the adoption of genetically modified crops is gathering momentum globally. The United States of America ranks top among the countries that have commercially adopted GM crops, followed by Brazil, Argentina, India, and Canada. In Africa, South Africa, Burkina Faso, and Sudan are the front-runners in the adoption of GMOs. So far, the soybean, maize, cotton, canola, and the eggplant, locally known as mbiriganya, are the crops whose genetically modified variants have been accepted for commercial exploitation globally.
The technology is advancing in both developed and developing countries, and we would wish that this knowledge can also inform the decisions that are going to be made by our government.
The government outlawed the importation and production of GM crops in 2012 for reasons that some biotechnologists point to fear and lack of knowledge.
Probably if they mounted, when they mounted the ban, when the fears were there, that was 2 years ago. If there was anything to learn, we have explained to them. Probably we had not talked the way we are talking that time, and they didn't even know that there is capacity. They didn't probably know that there is, regulatory platform.
But some legislators are now seeking to push for the lifting of the ban on GM crops.
I'm in Parliament, so I should be able to meet with my colleagues and through the normal legislative process, see how that can be accommodated and be done the soonest as possible.
Biotechnology experts maintain that the adoption of GM crops holds the key to enabling Kenya to increase its crop yields. Whether the government holds the same view remains to be seen. Patrick Igunza, Citizen Business, the Digital Edition.
Well, and that's how we wind up Citizen Business, the Digital Edition tonight. Thanks for watching. I am Terry Ann Chibet. Have a good night.